I had a totally different talk planned for tonight. I had this whole thing about aerodynamics that I was going to talk about teed up. And then my wife made this one kind of offhanded comment, and my brain went in a totally different direction, and suddenly I had a whole new talk. So I'm going to save the airplanes for next month. We'll talk about that later, but I'm going to talk about something else tonight. I want to start with 4 very short teachings. None of these are from Scripture. These are from other sources. Very short. The first one is from Case 39 from the Book of Serenity. The Book of Serenity is a collection of kongans, these encounter stories between teachers and students. This particular one, the Book of Serenity, was compiled back in the 1200s, so it's 800 years old. A monk asked Joshu. Joshu is a very famous Zen teacher, or Chan teacher from this period in China. This was compiled in China. Lots of koans about Joshu. A monk asked Joshu, "Your student has just entered the monastery. Please, master, instruct me." Joshu said, "Did you finish your rice gruel?" The standard breakfast in a Chan monastery, even today. The monk answered, "I have finished eating." Joshu replied, "Then wash your bowls." The second teaching is one little verse from a collection called the Zenrin Kushu. That means, this one's from Japan, Anthology of Passages from the Forests of Zen. This is a collection of writings that's used in the Rinzai school of Japanese Zen, which is they're kind of cousins. All Korean Zen is kind of in the same family as the Rinzai school in Japan. This is from the 1400s, the late 1400s was when this was compiled. So here's the teaching. There's nothing equal to wearing clothes and eating food. Outside of this, there are neither Buddhas nor patriarchs. The third one is another kongan. This one's a story about Master Muzhao Daozong, who lived in the 800s. That's the Tang dynasty in China, which in some ways was kind of the golden age of Chinese Chan. It's often referred to as the Great Tang dynasty. A monk asked Muzhou a question. "We dress and eat every day, but how do we escape from the repetition of having to put on clothes and eat food?" Muzhou answered, "We get dressed, we eat." "I don't understand," said the monk. Muzhou replied, "If you don't understand, put on your clothes and eat your food." The last one here is a teaching from Chan patriarch Linji Yishuan. He's the founder of the Linji school. In Korean, that's Imjaejang. This is the school that the Rinzai tradition and all of the different Korean orders of Buddhism are in this Linji tradition that came from China. He died in year 866, so again, Tang dynasty in China. There is no place for special effort in Buddhism. Just go through your everyday life with no fuss. Empty your bowels and bladder. Eat, drink, and when you get tired, lie down. The foolish will laugh at me, but the wise understand. So Sunday, there were a group of us here who watched a documentary together. It's a 2-part documentary about Jongkwan Sunim. Jongkwan Sunim's a pretty well-known Korean Buddhist nun who's an expert on the tradition of temple food in Korea. For anyone who couldn't come, it's called The Philosopher's Kitchen. It's on Netflix. I recommend it. It was really good. Didn't you think it was good? I thought it was good. Very good movie. This coming Saturday, we're going to be holding a workshop here about the formal meal ceremony, what in Korean we call baru gongyang, which literally that means alms bowl, baru, alms bowl, offering, gongyang, alms bowl offering. The participants in the workshop are going to learn about the theory of this. Why do we do it? How do we do it? What does it mean? The idea of eating as a spiritual practice. And then we're actually going to eat together, right? We're going to have a meal together. We're going to have lunch together. We're going to do this for our lunch on Saturday. Now, obviously, eating food is a biological necessity, right? Everybody eats. Everywhere around the world, everybody eats. It's not there's some weird, strange tribe of people in Papua New Guinea somewhere who don't eat. Everybody eats. People eat, over when you look at different cultures and you look through history, obviously people have eaten different things and people have eaten in different ways, but everybody eats. It's common within cultures and even within households to have routines around meals, habits for how things go and where people sit and what utensils we use and these sorts of things. Sometimes these routines have a value and a meaning to the participants to the point that they're really important and special, and we might want to think of them as rituals rather than just kind of routines or habits, because they reflect something genuine, maybe even a religious, spiritual genuineness to the way things are done, the elements of the way the meal is done. Especially here in America, we've got this preponderance of Protestantism in America, and it's focused on belief as the critical religious issue and key to salvation. Right? From a Protestant point of view, you get to heaven if you believe the right stuff. Right? That's the important thing. So because of that, a lot of people tend to understand kind of the doing aspect of religion as something that only happens in an hour or two a week. Sunday morning, maybe Saturday night, maybe Friday night, depending on the tradition that they're in. Maybe they say a perfunctory little prayer for grace before meals. Maybe they don't. That might be about it. There isn't a lot of doing that's involved. However, in many religious traditions, practice is more important than belief. A person is part of the community if they do the right stuff. The big fancy word for that is orthopraxy, right? The proper practices, the proper activities. Not because they believe the right stuff, orthodoxy. Right? In a tradition of this sort, following the faith means adopting a whole lifestyle where religious practices and elements are kind of infused throughout the day. Most everything the person does, there's a religious element to it. They're doing it for some religious reason. The first example that might come to mind for you about that sort of thing might be Islam, Muslims, the practice of praying 5 times a day. That's kind of an obvious example of something you do throughout the day. First thing in the morning when you wake up, last thing before you go to bed, other times during the day. But for a devout Muslim, more traditional Orthodox Jews, it would be kind of the same sort of thing. The whole day, beginning to end, reflects their faith. Almost every activity is influenced by their religious values and their practices. How they dress, what they eat, how they eat, who they touch, who they don't, where they go, where they don't go, how they speak, their hygiene, their sex lives, the media they consume or the media that they avoid. All of those things are expression of their faith. Or think maybe about something that might be more familiar. Think about maybe a very devout Roman Catholic layperson, right? They may start and end their day every day with prayer, scripture reading. They may follow the Book of Hours on their own as they're, in addition to maybe going to Mass every week, maybe a few different times a week, more than just once a week. They may wear St. Francis's brown scapula under their clothes every day. They may pray the rosary devotedly. They may never eat a bite of food without saying grace first and expressing thanks and gratitude. So anyone watching this person's day-to-day routine would unquestionably understand their devotion, right? It's sort of continually enacted through the day. You can see it in all these things that they're doing. In a really similar way, the Buddha Dharma, with its focus on practice over doctrine, optimally is a lifestyle, right? It's something that should be sort of visibly reflected in our choices and our actions. It's not just something that sort of lives between our ears. It's something that we do with our bodies, and it's something that we do outwardly and sort of visibly, observably. In the sutra that bears his name, the enlightened layperson Vimalakirti teaches that every place in the world is the place of practice. And that means every moment of every day is an opportunity for practice. Every moment of every day, everywhere we go, is an opportunity to open the mind. If we're really living a Buddhist life, it kind of just can't be a one evening a week thing. There should be kind of a scent of incense about kind of every minute of the day as we're going through things. Awake in the morning with a spiritual intention for the day. Begin the day with some meditation, maybe a little chanting. Express gratitude before you eat your breakfast and other meals. Go through your workday with the goal of reducing the suffering of the beings that you interact with. As often as the opportunity arises, connect to nature. Create space in your daily life for spiritual reading. And finally, end the day with spiritual practice and go to sleep with a sense of contentment, of equanimity, knowing that you've done what you can to manifest the dharma as fully as you can in your life, as fully as possible in your life. That quote I read from Chan Patriarch Linji earlier makes clear even our eliminative functions are an opportunity for spiritual experience if we're open to that, right? I mean, consider, if any of you maybe haven't noticed it, but in the bathroom on the wall in front of the toilet, we have a mantra, right? The mantra of the outhouse is posted in our restroom. What a great pleasure to let go and discard everything. When one rids oneself of the three defilements of greed, anger, and ignorance that cloud one's mind so that not a single cloud remains, the moonlight from the west offers a bright big smile. Pureness obtained by emptying oneself is the best happiness one attains. There are some lineages in Buddhism where teachers encourage their students to recite short verses. They're called prayers. They're called gathas before a variety of everyday activities. One example of this is in the Japanese Zen tradition, in the Soto Zen tradition, the founder of Soto Zen, Dogen Zenji, left his followers a collection of these gathas to recite out loud, or maybe just sort of internally, just sort of think it, just sort of in your mind, as they do a variety of everyday activities. When they ring a bell, when they eat, when they bathe, when they shave, when they brush their teeth, even using the toilet. Doing what is needed to relieve myself, I pray that all living beings may get rid of filth and pollution and may be without lewdness, anger, and stupidity. That's Dogen's Gatha for the toilet. In the same spirit, Thich Nhat Hanh, in the Plum Village tradition, Vietnamese Zen Tien, provides, they have a chanting book. I have two different copies of it, two different editions of it over there in the library, and there's a chapter in there of these same kinds of gathas. Gathas, little verses to sort of recite or just sort of recite mentally different kinds of experiences. For example, there's one for sweeping the floor. As I carefully sweep the ground of enlightenment, a tree of understanding springs forth from the earth. That's Thich Nhat Hanh's Gatha for sweeping. Saying the Buddha Dharma is about eating food, putting on clothes, and going to the toilet is not derogatory. It's not derogatory. And a really important aspect of the Buddha's path is doing everyday activities in extraordinary ways. Finding the sacred in the ordinary. This is really important. We should strive, for example, to take the mental state from the meditation cushion chittaikagrata, right? The one-pointedness of mind that we try to have on the meditation cushion, and take that to the meal table and the workplace and the toilet. So if you consider this type of practice, it gives us the opportunity to examine our own path, to think about how engaged we are, whether we're sort of really deeply committed or we're just sort of doing things in a more superficial kind of way. If you think about these sorts of practices as the medicine that they are, we have this whole pharmacopoeia of treatments that are available to us at our disposal that we can use to treat the confusion or the malaise or the anxiety that we may be experiencing in our lives. I'm going to put this in a little controversial way, and I fully acknowledge that I've stolen this. I've heard other people from other religious traditions make a similar metaphor here. I'm going to use it anyway. If being a Buddhist were suddenly a crime, if suddenly it were illegal to be a Buddhist, would there be sufficient evidence to convict you? Or is Buddhist just a label? It's just, for some people, Buddhist is just a label that they use. Like, somebody who calls themselves a musician because they own an instrument, but they ain't playing it ever. They haven't played it in 20 years or whatever. Or a person who claims to be a writer who never writes. Writers write. If you're not writing, you're not a writer. But some people, just claiming a label. For some people, Buddhist is just a label that they claim, but they don't really live it. I'm sure you're familiar with James Whitcomb Riley's duck test. You might not know his name. You might not know this comes from a particular guy, but it did. James Whitcomb Riley, the duck test. When I see a bird that walks like a duck and swims like a duck and quacks like a duck, I call that bird a duck. So in a similar fashion, we're truly a Buddhist if we live a Buddhist life, not just because we call ourselves one. You got to swim like a Buddhist and quack like a Buddhist if you're really a Buddhist. Let me go back to a couple of those teachings that I started with. Let me just remind you. There's nothing equal to wearing clothes and eating food. Outside this, there are neither Buddhas nor patriarchs. Just go through your everyday life with no fuss. Empty your bowels and your bladder. Eat, drink, and when you get tired, lie down. The foolish will laugh at me, but the wise understand. So all of these activities, from arising to sleeping, these are opportunities for moments of practice. They're skillful means. They're upaya. They're skillful means for following the path of a bodhisattva. So I hope you pass the Buddhist duck test, right? And for your own sake and for the world's benefit as well. Songbala Shipshio, may you I and all beings manifest enlightenment.